planting evidence that suggested Adaeze had been stealing money from the business. When Chukwudi's friends confronted her, Adaeze, confused and distraught, could not defend herself. They accused her of being a thief and a burden, and under Nneka's manipulation, Chukwudi ordered her out of the house. Adaeze, humiliated and broken, was cast out onto the streets with nothing but the clothes on her back. In the heart of a bustling Igbo town known for its thriving markets and busy streets, there lived a man named Chukwudi. He was a man of great stature, respected by all for his honesty, hard work, and skill as the owner of the most successful butcher shop in the region. Chukwudi's shop was the lifeblood of his wealth, attracting customers from nearby villages who sought the best cuts of meat and fair prices. His reputation as a fair trader and an honorable man made him a beloved figure in the community. Chukwudi was married to Adaeze, a woman known for her beauty, grace, and kindness. Adaeze was the daughter of a prominent family, and her marriage to Chukwudi was a union celebrated by many. She had a warm, nurturing spirit and was deeply committed to her husband. Together, they made a picture-perfect couple, admired by all who knew them. The story of how they met was one told with fondness by their friends and family. Adaeze had been visiting the market with her mother when she first laid eyes on Chukwudi. He was busy at his shop, meticulously cutting meat for a customer, and there was something about his focus and dedication that caught her attention. Chukwudi, on the other hand, was captivated by Adaeze's beauty and grace as she passed by. Their eyes met, and in that moment, a connection was made. Their courtship was swift yet filled with the kind of romance that seemed destined by fate. Chukwudi, ever the gentleman, would visit Adaeze's family home, bringing gifts and always showing respect. Adaeze, in turn, fell deeply in love with his gentle nature and strong work ethic. They were married within a year, and their life together was one of harmony and shared dreams. But as with all tales, there were shadows lurking that would soon disrupt their peace. Nneka was a young woman from the same town, known for her striking beauty and sharp wit. She was well liked in the community, often seen at social gatherings and markets, where her laughter and charm captivated many. Nneka had a way of making people feel at ease, and her friendship was sought after by many. She lived alone, having lost her parents at a young age, but she managed to build a life for herself. She was a regular at Chukwudi's butcher shop, always exchanging pleasantries and making small talk with him. Adaeze, being the kind soul that she was, welcomed Nneka into her life as a friend, not knowing the turmoil that would soon follow. Nneka's introduction to Chukwudi was through her frequent visits to his shop. She would often stop by to buy meat, and over time, she and Chukwudi developed a casual friendship. Nneka admired Chukwudi's dedication to his work and his deep love for Adaeze. But admiration soon turned into something else, a desire for the life that Adaeze was living. Nneka's opportunity came one evening when she visited the shop just as Chukwudi was closing up. They talked about life, business, and eventually, their conversation turned to more personal matters. Nneka, with her usual charm, managed to draw out Chukwudi's concerns and frustrations. He spoke of how much he loved Adaeze, but also of their struggle to have children. It was a topic that weighed heavily on his heart, for despite their years of marriage, Adaeze had not been able to conceive. Nneka listened with faint sympathy, carefully planting seeds of doubt in Chukwudi's mind. She suggested, subtly at first, that perhaps Adaeze was not meant to bear children and that his lineage would end with him if he did not consider other options. She spoke of a distant relative who had faced a similar situation and found solace elsewhere, suggesting that Chukwudi might need to think beyond his current situation. As weeks turned into months, Nneka continued to visit Chukwudi, slowly becoming more involved in his life. She would bring him food, offer to help with the shop, and eventually, became a confidant. Chukwudi, burdened by his unfulfilled desire for a child, began to spend more time with Nneka. Their relationship grew closer, but it was still innocent, at least, in his mind. Adaeze noticed the changes in her husband but could not understand them. The love that had once flowed freely between them now felt strained. Their conversations grew shorter, their time together less frequent. Chukwudi began to come home later, often with excuses that he had been busy at the shop or that he needed to attend to business matters. Adaeze's heart ached, but she did not know how to bridge the growing gap between them. The final blow came when Nneka, emboldened by the distance she had created between Chukwudi and Adaeze, suggested that she could help him fulfill his dream of becoming a father. She confided in him that she had always admired him and that she would be willing to bear a child for him, a child that would carry on his name and legacy. She framed it as an act of love and devotion, making Chukwudi believe that it was the only way to ensure his future. Desperate and blinded by his desire for an heir, Chukwudi agreed to Nneka's proposal. They began an affair, one that was carefully hidden from Adaeze. Nneka, however, was not content with just having a child. She sought more, and her ambition knew no bounds. She reached out to a long-lost friend who was well-versed in dark magic, seeking ways to further secure her place in Chukwudi's life. Through rituals and spells, Nneka began to weave a web of deceit and control over Chukwudi. Slowly, the love that he once had for Adaeze turned cold. He became distant, irritable, and easily angered. Nneka's influence grew stronger with each passing day, and soon, Chukwudi found himself more attached to her than to his own wife. As the affair continued, Nneka became pregnant, just as she had promised. She used this pregnancy to manipulate Chukwudi further, convincing him that Adaeze could no longer be a part of his life if he wanted to build a future for his child. Chukwudi, under Nneka's spell, agreed to marry her, casting Adaeze aside. Nneka's influence over Chukwudi deepened as their marriage became official. Adaeze, devastated and heartbroken, was forced to remain in the same house, now as the second wife to Nneka. She could hardly recognize the man she had married, and the home that once brought her joy had become a place of sorrow. Nneka, now emboldened by her new status, began to exert her control over the household. She used dark magic to further drive a wedge between Chukwudi and Adaeze. Every night, she would perform rituals, adding harmful concoctions to Chukwudi's food and drink, ensuring that his love for Adaeze turned into resentment. The once loving husband became cold and harsh, often finding reasons to scold or punish Adaeze for the smallest mistakes. Nneka took every opportunity to belittle Adaeze, reminding her that she was barren and no longer needed. She would find fault in everything Adaeze did, berating her in front of the servants and even Chukwudi. The abuse was not just emotional but also physical. Nneka would slap, push, and shove Adaeze, knowing that Chukwudi would do nothing to defend her. Adaeze's suffering grew with each passing day. She felt trapped in a nightmare, unable to escape the torment that had taken over her life. Her health began to deteriorate, and she became a shadow of her former self. The once vibrant and beautiful woman was now weak, frail, and broken. Nneka's control over Chukwudi extended to the business as well. She convinced him to hand over more responsibilities to her, under the guise of helping him manage the growing demands of the shop. Chukwudi, now fully under her spell, agreed, allowing Nneka to take charge of the finances and operations. She slowly began to siphon money from the business, hiding it away for herself, all while continuing to plot Adaeze's downfall. One day, Chukwudi was found dead in his shop. His body was discovered by a customer who had come to purchase meat. The cause of death was ruled as a robbery gone wrong, but those who knew him suspected foul play. Nneka, however, had carefully planned his death, using dark magic to end his life while making it look like a tragic accident. With Chukwudi gone, Nneka wasted no time in claiming ownership of the shop and all of his assets. She forged documents, manipulated the legal system, and within weeks, she had taken control of everything that had once belonged to Chukwudi and Adaeze. Adaeze was left with nothing. Her husband was gone, her home was no longer hers, and the business that had sustained them was now in Nneka's hands. But Nneka's greed did not stop there. She wanted Adaeze out of the picture entirely. Chukwudi had always been a man of the people, well-liked and respected in the community. His success as a butcher was not just a result of hard work but also of the strong relationships he had cultivated over the years. Among his closest friends were Obinna, Uche, and Emeka, men who had been by his side through thick and thin. Obinna, a fellow businessman who owned a successful palm oil trade, had met Chukwudi during a market dispute years ago. They had resolved the issue amicably and quickly realized they had much in common. Uche, a local carpenter known for his skill and honesty, had crafted the furniture in Chukwudi and Adaeze's home. He and Chukwudi had bonded over their shared values of integrity and hard work. Nneka, a school teacher, was the most educated of the group and had provided Chukwudi with advice on managing his business finances. The four men were inseparable, often meeting to discuss business, family, and life over drinks. When Nneka entered Chukwudi's life, his friends were initially wary of her. They had heard whispers about her, a woman known for her beauty and cunning, who had a reputation for getting what she wanted. But Chukwudi, blinded by her charms, dismissed their concerns, reassuring them that Nneka was merely helping around the house and assisting Adaeze during her difficult times. Nneka, however, had other plans. She knew that to gain complete control over Chukwudi's wealth, she would need to neutralize the influence of his friends. Slowly, she began to weave her web of deceit, using her beauty and dark magic to bend them to her will. It started subtly. Nneka would invite Obinna, Uche, and Nneka to the house under the guise of hospitality, offering them food and drink. Unbeknownst to them, the food was laced with potions that clouded their judgment and made them more susceptible to Nneka's manipulations. Over time, she began to sow seeds of doubt in their minds, planting ideas that Adaeze was not fit to manage Chukwudi's estate, that she was unstable and a threat to their friend's legacy. Nneka's manipulation wasn't just psychological, it was also magical. She consulted with a longtime friend who was well-versed in dark magic. Together, they crafted spells to weaken the bond between Chukwudi and his friends. These spells caused misunderstandings and conflicts, leading to strained relationships. The friends, once loyal and protective of Chukwudi, began to distance themselves from Adaeze, believing the lies Nneka fed them. As Nneka's influence over them grew, she began to make her move. She convinced them that for the sake of Chukwudi's legacy, she should be the one to manage his business and finances. She played on their fears and insecurities, painting herself as the only one capable of ensuring that Chukwudi's wealth would not be squandered. Slowly but surely, she gained control over the business, with Obinna, Uche, and Nneka unwittingly aiding her in her deceitful plans. Meanwhile, Adaeze's life was becoming unbearable. Nneka's cruelty knew no bounds, and she often took out her frustrations on Adaeze. On more than one occasion, Nneka tried to kill Adaeze, but each attempt was thwarted by some unforeseen circumstance. Once, she tried to poison Adaeze's food, but the dish was accidentally spilled before Adaeze could eat it. Another time, she tampered with the brakes on Adaeze's bicycle, hoping for a fatal accident, but a passerby warned Adaeze before she set off. Nneka's frustration grew with each failed attempt, and her treatment of Adaeze became more brutal. She would beat Adaeze for the slightest perceived mistake, verbally abuse her, and isolate her from the outside world. The once vibrant and happy Adaeze was now a shadow of her former self, living in constant fear and despair. One day, Nneka finally found an opportunity to drive Adaeze out of the house. She had set a trap, deliberately planting evidence that suggested Adaeze had been stealing money from the business. When Chukwudi's friends confronted her, Adaeze, confused and distraught, could not defend herself. They accused her of being a thief and a burden, and under Nneka's manipulation, Chukwudi ordered her out of the house. Adaeze, humiliated and broken, was cast out onto the streets with nothing but the clothes on her back. Nneka had won. With Adaeze gone and Chukwudi's friends under her control, she quickly moved to secure her position. Chukwudi's business was now entirely in her hands, and she ruled with an iron fist. But Nneka's hunger for power was insatiable, and she knew that as long as Adaeze was alive, her position was not secure. Nneka made several attempts to kill Adaeze, but each time, fate intervened. Whether it was poison, dark magic, or physical assault, Adaeze survived, though each attempt left her weaker and more isolated. The final straw came when Nneka's ritualist told her that the only way to truly rid herself of Adaeze was to drive her mad. Months passed after Adaeze was driven out of her home. She wandered the streets, her once beautiful clothes now ragged and dirty, her spirit shattered by the betrayal and abuse she had suffered. The town was abuzz with rumors of her madness, though few recognized her in her disheveled state. One day, Adaeze reappeared in the village, but she was a shadow of her former self. The woman who had once been the pride of her community was now a pitiful figure, her hair matted and her skin caked with dirt. No one recognized her at first, and those who did were too shocked to approach her. The once proud Adaeze was now just the strange pregnant madwoman who haunted the streets. There was something unsettling about her, something that made the villagers whisper among themselves. She would wander aimlessly, but every day, without fail, she would make her way to Chukwudi's old butcher shop. She would stand outside the shop, her eyes vacant, muttering to herself as she cradled her swollen belly. The villagers couldn't understand her obsession with the shop, but it became a common sight, a ghostly figure from a tragic past. As the days turned into weeks, Adaeze's condition worsened. Her belly grew larger, and her madness deepened. She would speak to the walls, argue with invisible figures, and weep uncontrollably. But no matter how far her mind wandered, she always returned to the shop, as if drawn by some unseen force. The villagers, though fearful of her, began to feel a strange pity for Adaeze. They could see that she was pregnant, but no one knew who the father was or how she had come to be in such a state. Some speculated that the child she carried was Chukwudi's, a final, tragic twist in the story of a once happy couple. Others believed that the baby was a product of her madness, a curse born from her suffering. Despite their pity, the villagers kept their distance. Nneka's shadow still loomed large over the community, and no one dared to defy her by helping Adaeze. But as time went on, it became clear that the strange pregnant madwoman was more than just a victim of circumstance. She was a reminder of the evil that had been unleashed in their midst, and the consequences that were yet to come.